after the glory of Ramesses II, and after Egypt had shaken the world with its voice and swords, the sun began to set. The kings who came after him, they weren't like him. They weakened, they dispersed, and the temples became more powerful than the palaces. The priests became the true kings. They were the ones who made the decisions, they owned the gold, and they controlled everything behind the scenes. And over time, Egypt began to lose itself. Its armies were no longer what they once were, and chaos spread everywhere. And at the very moment Egypt was weakening, the world around it was changing. In the east, the Assyrians were rising like a storm. In the west, the Libyans were getting closer and closer. And in the north, the Greeks were preparing for their emergence. Egypt, which had once been the heart of the world, had become an arena of conflict. Everyone wanted a piece of it. Every king who comes grows weaker than the one before him. Here, the question we must ask: how did an empire of this magnitude suddenly fall? How did the priests control the kings? And how did Egypt open its doors wide to all invaders? This story is not just history. This is a moment of decline, the end of an era, and the beginning of a time. Generations will call it the age of the fall of the Pharaohs.
After the glory of Ramses II, who made Egypt supreme, the sun began to set. The kings who came after him were weaker, as if their glory had ended. The wars with the Hittites in the north and the Libyans in the west were exhausting. The army was exhausted, the treasury was empty, and the people began to sense that Egypt was no longer the same as before. Ramses III, the last of the greats. Amidst this chaos, a king named Ramses III emerged. This man was the last of them to possess the same heroic spirit. In his time, a deadly danger arose: the Sea Peoples. Groups came from various places, destroying many lands along the way, all heading toward Egypt. Huge ships, fierce warriors, but Ramses III was not afraid. He gathered his army and encamped on the shores. The battle was terrifying. Arrows flew, ships crashed, and the sound of war was terrifying. But in the end, Egypt triumphed. Ramses III saved it, but unfortunately, he was the last to save it. The true beginning of the end. After Ramses III died, Egypt began to fall one by one. Chaos gripped everything. Corruption increased, and hungry people could no longer find food. The priests took control of the temples, and vast fortunes slipped into their hands. You now had a king on paper, but the ones who actually ruled were the priests. And not only that, Egypt itself was divided. The north had one king, and the south had another. It was as if the land that had united the world was unable to unite itself. At that moment, history was writing a new sentence. The age of glory has ended, and the age of weakness has begun. Egypt, which taught the world, would now enter a strange vortex, which they would later call the Late Period.
After Egypt was at the height of its glory, its power began to weaken. The kings grew weaker, and the people lost faith in the ruler. The result? Every power around it began to view Egypt as ready spoils. The first people to enter the scene were the Libyans, tribes living on the edges of the delta, and when they found that the Egyptian kings were powerless, they began to infiltrate the country little by little until they had ruling dynasties. But the strange thing? The Libyans were influenced by Egypt more than they changed it. They began wearing crowns, building temples, and writing in hieroglyphics. It was as if Egyptian civilization had swallowed them up from within. They weren't the ones who controlled it, it was the one who absorbed them. But from the south, someone else was preparing. The Nubians, or as they were called, the Kushites. Their leader, Pianki, saw himself as the true heir to the throne of Egypt.
He gathered his army and advanced from Nubia northward, step by step until he controlled all of Egypt. Pianki was no tyrant. He believed in the spirit of ancient Egypt. He restored the worship of Amun. He restored the temples. It was as if time had gone back to the days of pharaonic glory. But unfortunately, this glory did not last. From the east, a terrifying force emerged, the Assyrians, an empire that knew no mercy, and its armies were like a hurricane, crushing all before it. And when they turned their gaze toward Egypt, disaster struck. They invaded with savagery. They burned cities, destroyed temples, and overthrew the Nubian kings. It was one of the darkest moments in Egypt's history. After the Assyrians' fire subsided, a mightier force arrived, the Persians. They entered Egypt as emperors, not invaders. They placed it under their rule. They imposed taxes and humiliated the people. For the first time, Egypt became a province within a foreign empire. Its spirit was suffocated and its voice disappeared. The late period was like a series of nightmares. Libyans, Nubians, Assyrians, Persians, each one came, plundered, and left. But in the midst of all this, one question remained in the hearts of Egyptians. Is this Egypt's destiny? Or will it one day rise again and regain the glory it had lost?
After long years of weakness and occupation, there was still a small spark within the Egyptians, a spark of rejection and longing for a time when the king was Egyptian and the land was Egyptian. And one day, that spark was ignited again. In the 7th century BC, a new dynasty emerged from a city called Sa al-Hajjar in the Nile Delta. The people called them the Sayyites, and from among them emerged a king named Ahmose II. This Ahmose was a very wise man, not a reckless warrior. No, he was a smart politician. He knew that if Egypt fought the Persians or the Greeks alone, it would be defeated. So he began to play a different game. He opened trade with the Greeks and built the port of Naucratis, which became a bridge between East and West. Egypt began to move again. People worked, temples were rebuilt, and the army began to get back on its feet. It looked like it would come back. But the truth, what was coming was stronger than any king or army. The Persians in the east were swallowing kingdoms one after the other, and Egypt, despite its somewhat restored strength, was unable to withstand them. So these attempts at independence were like a breath caught between drowning and drowning. But what matters, that breath is what kept Egypt's spirit alive, waiting for another moment when it could come back and scream once again, "We're here, and we're not finished yet."
At a time when Egypt was trying to remember its ancient glories, the world around it was boiling. In the east, Mesopotamia, New Babylon was brought back to life by the great king Nebuchadnezzar II, who built the Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the world. But as glory comes, it also goes. The Persians, led by Cyrus the Great, entered Babylon and brought it down. From here, the Persian Empire emerged, the power that would change the balance of power in the entire region, and which would soon be upon Egypt. As for the West, in Greece, city-states began to rise, Athens with its brains and Sparta with its swords. In Athens, a new idea was born for the entire world, democracy. And in Sparta, the system was ironclad, a life full of war and discipline. The Persians tried to invade them, but the Persian Wars broke out. The Battle of Marathon, then the legendary Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans stood against thousands. Moments that changed the course of history and made the name of Greece resound throughout the world. And in the southeast, India. Kingdoms were forming, civilizations were emerging. Out of this era, the beginnings of a new religion began, Buddhism, which would change the way of thinking of all of humanity in the coming years. And in the Far East, China, it was the age of warring states. Each kingdom fought the other. Blood, chaos, and endless conflict. But out of this chaos, the Qin dynasty would rise, uniting China and building its Great Wall, which still stands today. And in the end, the world was changing at a terrifying speed. Powers fell and powers rose. The Persians, the Greeks, the Indians, the Chinese, all were writing a new future. As for Egypt, it was still stuck in the past. It watched the world change around it, but it was unable to move.
In the 4th century BC, a strange young man appeared. His ambition knew no bounds. His name was Alexander. He was raised by Aristotle, the great philosopher. But Alexander wasn't like him. He didn't want to understand the world. He wanted to own it. He began to conquer the Persian Empire, battle after battle, from Granicus to Issus to Gaugamela. All of this proved that he was no ordinary man. He was a hurricane on the ground. And when he turned his sights toward Egypt in 332 BC, Egypt was already tired of Persian rule. The people were fed up with injustice, taxes, and wars. But the strange thing, when Alexander entered Egypt, there was no fighting, no resistance, no bloodshed. The Egyptians welcomed him like the awaited hero. They said to him, "Welcome, liberator." He himself was surprised by their reception and felt that this country possessed an extraordinary magic. He decided to build a city there, not just any city, a city that would be a gateway between East and West and bear his name, Alexandria. This city later became the heart of the ancient world, its library, its lighthouse, its scholars. All of this began with a single decision by Alexander. But he didn't stay in Egypt long. He was always looking for a new war, a farther horizon. He reached Asia and India, but his impact remained here, like an indelible fingerprint. Because his entry into Egypt wasn't an invasion, it was a transformation. Its beginning was a new page, its name the Ptolemaic era.
And here, Egypt stands at a crossroads. After more than 3,000 years of pharaonic rule, the sun that illuminated the ancient world has begun to set. The pharaonic era has ended, but the real question is Egypt finished? No, Egypt never dies. It just changes its face. Every time it falls, it rises again in a different form, stronger and stranger. Now, a completely new page is beginning. Alexander entered, the Greeks came, and Alexandria became the jewel of the Mediterranean. From its library, a science emerged that changed the world. From its lighthouse, a light emerged that pierced the darkness of history. So don't say the pharaohs are finished. Say Egypt has put on a new face. In the next episode, we will continue the journey from Alexander to Cleopatra, from the glory of the Ptolemies to the Roman conquest. We will see how Egypt always manages to amaze the world once again.